When Ava catches her boyfriend of 5 years, Liam, cheating on her at the place they once called their secret haven, she decides to serve a cold, poetic revenge. But what begins as payback turns into a journey of self-liberation, empowerment, and a final twist that no one sees coming. If you asked me then, I'd have told you that the little dock by Willow Lake was my favorite place in the world. Not Paris, not some 5-star beach resort. Just that weathered wooden pier stretching out into a silvery mirror of water, surrounded by whispering pines. It was our spot. His and mine. Jake and I found it during our first month together, back when love felt new and so huge I thought it could swallow me whole. We were just two broke 20-somethings trying to escape the suffocating noise of the city. He pulled off the highway on a whim, following some hand-painted sign for a scenic overlook. We parked, tumbled out of the car and stumbled through a tunnel of trees. Then there it was. The dock, the lake, the hush of wind threading through pine needles, like we'd tripped into another world. Jake said it was magic. He said we were magic. He kissed me there for the first time, one shoe dangling off the edge of the dock, half drunk on cheap wine and teenage dreams. We carved our initials into the railing with his house key. J+M forever. God, how young I felt that day. People always say love fades with time, but I held on for too long. To the place, to him, to the idea of us. Even after 4 years together, the dock was our anchor. When things felt off, when work made us strangers or life's dull knives cut too deep, we'd come back here. Picnics in the summer. Hot coffee in the fall, steam curling from our mugs as the leaves flamed red and gold around us. We'd sit cross-legged, sharing old memories and promising each other new ones. And the fights. We had our share. The kind you slam doors over, the kind you think you can't recover from. But somehow we always ended up here, apologies tasting like salt and lake water, making up on the hood of his car while the crickets sang. This place meant everything to me. Which is why I couldn't see the cracks forming under its surface. Or under ours. The last time I drove out to Willow Lake with Jake, he was quiet. Not the comforting, thoughtful kind of quiet that says he's listening. It was the hollow quiet that tells you he's somewhere else entirely, maybe with someone else. I asked him what was wrong. He said, "Work's just insane, babe. I'll be better once this project is over." He gave me that lopsided grin, the one that used to make my stomach flip. I believed him. I wanted to. But lately, the hush of our spot didn't feel like peace. Felt like a lie echoing back at me. I never planned to spy on him. I'm not that girl. Or at least I didn't think I was. But sometimes when you sense the walls of your world cracking, you need to know why. And sometimes, your favorite place becomes the last piece of evidence you need to break your own heart. So you can finally start putting it back together. That night I sat on the dock alone. Jake was working late, but I knew better. The moon hung low, a ghostly coin above the lake. I traced our initials on the railing with my fingertip. The carving was faded now, splintering. Just like us. In that moment, I promised myself that the next time I stood here, I'd be different. Stronger. Wiser. Someone who could reclaim this place. Not as ours, but as mine. Little did I know the perfect place would soon become the perfect stage for the payback he never saw coming. And honestly, I think that part might be the only thing that saves it. I wish I could tell you there was a single moment when everything became obvious. A text I wasn't supposed to see, lipstick on a collar, a stranger's perfume clinging to him when he got into bed. But the truth is, betrayal doesn't usually shout. It whispers, soft enough for you to convince yourself you're imagining things. It starts with little things. The slow drip of doubt. The first whisper came from Ava. She's been my best friend since we were 11, when we bonded over matching scraped knees and a mutual hatred for cafeteria pizza. She's the one person who knows all my stories, including how many times Jake and I had nearly broken up, and why we hadn't. We were at my place, sipping wine from mismatched mugs because I'd forgotten to wash the glasses. She watched me unlock my phone for the 5th time in an hour, pretending I wasn't waiting for a text that never came. "He's late again?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Ava's never been good at hiding concern. Her voice always wavers a bit when she's worried about me. "Yeah. He said he got caught up at the office." She raised an eyebrow. "He works at a marketing firm, not the Pentagon, Maya. Caught up at the office doesn't explain why he never picks up when you call." I forced a laugh. "You're reading too much into it. He's just busy." She swirled the wine in her mug, studying me. "I don't want to plant ideas, but you know you can talk to me if you feel something's off, right?" That was the thing, I did feel it. but saying it out loud would make it real and I wasn't ready for that. So I changed the subject. We talked about a new cafe in town, a show we both wanted to binge, anything but the truth. A few nights later it was Jake's phone that whispered. We were curled up on the couch, a movie we'd already seen playing on mute while he scrolled through his messages. I caught a glimpse of his screen over his shoulder, the way he angled it away, the flicker of guilt that crossed his face when he realized I'd seen the name Erica pop up. Who's Erica? I asked, trying to sound teasing instead of terrified. He didn't miss a beat. Just someone from work. She's new on the team. He leaned over and kissed me then, his lips brushing mine just long enough to silence my questions. His phone buzzed again and this time he shoved it under the throw pillow. After that, I started to notice how his clothes smelled different, like cheap floral perfume, the kind I'd never wear. Or how he'd pull away when I reached for him in bed, claiming he was exhausted. Or how he'd cancel dinner plans last minute with vague excuses. Client emergency. Rain check? He was always sorry, always promising to make it up to me. And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that love, our love, could survive a few cracks. But cracks become canyons when you ignore them long enough. The biggest red flag wasn't something Jake did. It was something he didn't do. We hadn't been to our favorite spot in months. Every time I suggested it, hey, let's drive out to the lake this weekend, just us, he'd brush me off. It's too cold right now. Or we'll go next month, babe, I'm swamped. He used to be the one who insisted we needed dock days to reconnect. Now he'd do anything to avoid it. One Friday afternoon I was supposed to meet him for lunch. He texted 10 minutes before, sorry, can't make it. Meeting ran long. Love you. The lie sat in my chest like a stone. He never said love you in texts. Not when he was truly busy. Only when he was guilty. That night I found myself parked outside his office building. I know how that sounds, pathetic, desperate. But my hands were trembling on the steering wheel and my stomach was a nest of snakes. I needed to see something real, something that would stop this endless loop of wondering. I waited. And waited. People streamed out, laughing and saying goodbye, but there was no sign of Jake. At 10:30 I watched him walk out, not alone. A woman with bright copper hair was next to him, laughing like they were in on the world's sweetest secret. They didn't touch. Not yet. But they didn't have to. The way he leaned toward her, the way her hand brushed his arm, it was enough. I ducked lower in my seat, my cheeks burning. I felt like an intruder in my own life. Like I'd just watched my future slipping through my fingers. I drove home with my heart pounding so hard I thought it would break my ribs. Ava was waiting for me in my kitchen, eating ice cream straight from the carton. I didn't have to say anything. He just looked at me, eyes softening. You know what you saw, right? I nodded. Yeah. I know. She set the ice cream aside and took my hand. So what are you going to do? I stared out the window, imagining that damn dock. The place where Jake first promised me forever. I saw the ripples on the water, the initials we carved into the railing, the lies tangled up in every memory. I'm going to catch him. I said it out loud this time and the words tasted like steel on my tongue. And then I'm going to break him. Right where he broke me. The next morning I woke up before the sun and started planning. If he wanted to ruin our favorite place with his betrayal, then that place would be my weapon. The stage for the kind of payback he'd never see coming. The whispers had turned into screams now. And I was finally listening. If the whispers were what cracked my heart, the betrayal was what shattered it. I still wonder if I would have kept lying to myself, clinging to excuses and half-believed alibis, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Maybe some part of me wanted to. It's easier to doubt your gut than to face the truth that the person you love the most can hurt you the deepest. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. It was a Tuesday. Jake thought I was at work, staying late to finish an end-of-quarter report. He didn't know I'd swapped my shift. He didn't know I'd been watching him for days, noticing patterns, reading the moments when his excuses lined up too perfectly. He didn't know I'd followed him once already, far enough to catch a glimpse of copper hair flickering beside him in the dark. I waited until he told me, going to meet a client at 6, don't wait up, babe. I told him I loved him because I wanted him to think I still did. Then I followed him. It felt wrong at first, driving behind him at a distance, keeping my lights low when he turned off the highway. Like I was the one breaking the rules. Like if I got caught, I'd be the villain. But the closer he got to Willow Lake, the angrier I became. I almost laughed when I realized where he was heading. Of all the places he could take her, a hotel, a bar, her place, anywhere, he brought her here. To our dock. The place he'd promised would always be ours. Maybe that was the worst part. Not the cheating, not the lying, but the fact that he'd desecrated the one thing that still felt pure. I parked a little ways back behind a stand of trees. My heartbeat drowned out everything else. The wind through the pines, the crunch of gravel under my boots. I crept down the path like I had so many times before, except this time there was no giggling, no playful shove, no Jake's hand warm around mine. Just me and my dread, step after step. The dock appeared through the trees, ghostly in the half-light. At first I thought maybe I'd been wrong. It looked empty, peaceful, the water still as glass. Then I heard it. A laugh, sharp and too high, cutting through the quiet like a blade. I stepped closer, pressing myself behind a tree trunk slick with moss. That's when I saw them. Jake sat on the railing, one foot dangling above the water like he always did. She stood between his knees, her hands tangled in his hair. Erica. Even in the fading dusk I could see her copper hair catch the last scraps of sun. She was young. Pretty, I guess. The kind of pretty that made you want to hate her even though you didn't know her. She tilted her head back when he kissed her neck. He said something I couldn't hear and she giggled again, that same sound that made my teeth ache. I felt it then. The final snap. Like an old bone breaking clean. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the shame to wash over the heartbreak. Long enough to realize I was shivering. Long enough to memorize the way he looked at her. The same way he used to look at me when this place still meant something. My phone was in my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I didn't want to do it, but I did. I lifted it, pressed record. I told myself it was proof. Proof for my sanity, for Ava, for anyone who might try to convince me later that it wasn't real. Jake pulled Erica closer. She laughed again, that bird-like trill. He whispered something against her collarbone. I wanted to scream, to run at them and tear this whole scene apart. But I didn't. I stood still and watched the love of my life turn into a stranger. When they pulled apart, he glanced over her shoulder, toward the trees. For a heartbeat I thought he saw me. His eyes drifted right past my hiding place. I held my breath until they turned back to each other. Should we go? She asked him. He grinned. Yeah. My place is closer. She giggled again and tugged his hand. They walked up the path together, steps echoing on the planks of the dock I used to think was sacred. I waited until they were gone. Then I stepped out onto the dock. My dock. I could still feel the heat of their betrayal in the air like smoke after a bonfire. The initials Jake and I had carved, J+M, were still there on the railing, but the wood was rotting. Bits of moss crept into the grooves, trying to erase what we'd promised each other. I traced it with my finger, feeling the splinters bite my skin. I thought I would cry, but there was no sadness left, just something harder, sharper, coiled deep in my chest. A branch snapped behind me. Ava's voice. I knew you'd come here. I turned around. She stood at the edge of the dock, flashlight in hand, eyes wide with worry. I hadn't even heard her car. She must have followed my location. Did you see it? I asked her, my voice a rasp. He nodded. I saw enough. I held up my phone. The screen glowed with the video thumbnail. Jake, Erica, my broken heart caught in 4K. Ava stepped closer, squeezing my shoulder. What now? I looked out over the lake. The moon was climbing higher, turning the water into hammered silver. Our favorite place, ruined but not forever. Because now it would be my stage. Now we give him something to remember. The first time Jake promised me forever, we were 22 and tipsy on cheap champagne at Willow Lake. He tucked a wildflower behind my ear and told me I was the only girl he could ever love. Funny how forever turned out to be less durable than that flower. The night I confronted him, the city felt too small to contain my anger. It vibrated under my skin like an electric wire about to snap. I told him to meet me at his place. He didn't know I'd seen them together. Him and her, that copper-haired mirage named Erica who had somehow found her way into our story. When he opened the door, he gave me that practiced grin, the one that used to melt my resolve, the one I now saw for what it really was. A mask. Hey babe. He leaned in for a kiss. I stepped back. Don't, I said. Just that. One word, sharp enough to slice the air between us. We sat across from each other in his living room. The same room where he once gave me a key saying, "This is your home too, you know." I remember clutching that little piece of brass like it was a ring. Stupid. Now that key felt like a blade in my pocket. I didn't bother with small talk. I opened my phone and pulled up the photos. Him walking out of his office with her. Him leaning in so close they could have shared secrets. Him caught by the girl who loved him more than she loved herself. I turned the screen toward him. "Explain this." His eyes flicked to the images, then back to me, cool, unbothered. He shrugged. "Seriously? You're following me now?" He let out a short, cold laugh. "Jesus, Maya. That's creepy." My mouth dropped open. "That's what you're going with? That I'm creepy? What do you want me to say?" He shot back, voice rising. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh. So you weren't out with her instead of meeting me for lunch? You weren't touching her hair at the bar? You didn't call her baby when you thought no one was listening?" His jaw tensed, but the lie was ready. "She's just a friend. Colleague. You know how these work dinners go. You're blowing this out of proportion. It was always like this. Me trying to connect the dots, him rearranging them until they spelled out my fault. I'd believed it before. Not this time. I felt my hands shaking, so I clenched them until my nails dug crescents into my palms. The pain grounded me. "Stop lying to me," I whispered. He sighed, a sound full of condescension. "Aya, you're paranoid. You've been paranoid for months. Do you even hear yourself? It's pathetic. Pathetic." That word hit harder than the photos, the texts, the perfume that wasn't mine clinging to his shirts. I realized then he wanted me to feel small. Because if I felt small, I'd stay. I looked around his apartment. Our apartment in the months I practically lived there. My books on the shelf. My toothbrush in the bathroom. The mug I always used sitting in the sink, lipstick stains still on the rim. How many times had she drunk from that mug too? Sat on my side of the bed? Did he kiss her the way he kissed me? Whisper the same empty promises? "You're not even sorry, are you?" I asked, my voice steady now. He stood up and ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. "Of course I'm sorry you feel this way. But I can't keep living under a microscope. If you can't trust me, what's the point?" I almost laughed. The audacity. If I can't trust you? I stood too. I was done sitting across from him like an accused criminal. "You're right," I said, my tone so calm it made his eyes narrow. "There's no point." 1,000 memories flickered through my mind. Our first trip to Willow Lake, the carved initials, the whispered forevers. I saw it all laid bare in the soft light of his living room. I saw how it was all built on quicksand. This was the moment I could have begged. Could have asked him to choose me. Could have asked him to confess and promise he'd change. But the version of me who might have done that was already dead. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, surprising us both with the steel in my voice. "You're going to keep lying. And I'm going to let you. For now." His brows drew together. "What does that mean?" "It means enjoy your new toy while you can." I smiled, a small, sharp thing. "I hope she makes you feel as good as you think you deserve." I picked up the key to his place, my place, and set it on the coffee table. It made the softest clink, but to me it sounded like a gavel slamming down. "You're not going to cause a scene, are you?" he asked, his tone shifting. Nervous now. Maybe he saw something in my eyes that he hadn't seen before. The part of me that was done playing the fool. "Oh, I'll give you a scene," I said. "But not tonight. I want you to think you've won first." I left him standing there, mouth open, phone still clutched in his hand like a shield. As I stepped into the hallway, the echo of that tiny door click behind me sounded like freedom. When I reached the street, Ava was waiting in her car. She saw my face and didn't ask questions. She just opened the passenger door and handed me a chocolate bar. She knows me better than anyone. Chocolate first, tears second. Back at my apartment, I curled up on my couch, still in my coat. My phone buzzed. "Aya, come back." "I'm sorry. Let's talk." I blocked him. Not forever, not yet. There were things I still needed to see. Proof I still needed to gather. But for now, I let the heartbreak wash over me. I let the promises, the ones he broke and the ones I'd whispered to myself at Willow Lake, burn away in the dark. Because I was ready to make new ones. The next time he saw me at our favorite spot, it wouldn't be to make up. It would be to watch everything he'd built crumble at my feet. I always thought revenge was petty. Childish even. The high road, that's what good people are supposed to take, right? I grew up believing that if someone hurt you, the best thing you could do was rise above it. Be the bigger person. Turn the other cheek. Funny how fast you abandon all that when your heart is split open at the seams. It started with the list. I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, phone in hand, old notebooks spread around me. Ava was perched on the edge of my bed, silently peeling the label off a beer bottle. She hadn't said don't do it. She knew better than to try. The list was simple. What does Jake care about most? It wasn't me. That much was clear. But he did care about his reputation. His precious image. He'd spent years building it. The golden boyfriend, the fun-loving guy everyone wanted to be around, the reliable coworker who'd help you meet deadlines but still buy the first round at happy hour. Everyone loved Jake. Everyone trusted Jake. Everyone except me. So what's the goal? Ava asked finally, her voice careful. I looked up from the notebook. I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She'd always been the one to keep me grounded. But now she was watching me unspool, and she wasn't sure whether to stop me or hand me the scissors. I want him to feel what I felt, I said. My voice didn't shake. I want him to lose something he thinks he'll never lose. To see it slip right through his hands and know there's no going back. Ava chewed her lip. He's a liar, Maya. You have proof? I turned my phone so she could see. The photos. The screenshots. The blurry shot of Jake's hand brushing Erica's hip as they leaned across the table at that downtown bar. The text I'd caught when he forgot to lock his screen. Miss you already, baby. Can't wait for tomorrow night. It was enough. Enough for me at least. The next step was figuring out how to make it hurt. Quiet revenge wouldn't do. Jake wouldn't care if I just dumped him and disappeared. He'd spin it into some story about how we grew apart, how we'd been headed in different directions. He'd be free to play the tragic hero, the good guy who just couldn't make it work. No. He needed to be exposed. And not just to me, to everyone he'd fooled. I made 2 lists. The first, Jake's weaknesses. His friends. The guys who thought he was loyal, who'd loan him their truck, who'd call him family. His work. The boss who trusted him, the clients who gave him too much rope because they liked his smile. The other women, the ones I suspected existed before Erica. The trail of broken hearts and half-truths he'd left behind, all convinced they were the only one. The second list, allies. Ava, of course. My ride or die. Hannah. My coworker who'd once admitted she'd caught Jake flirting at the company holiday party. An old acquaintance, Jess. The girl who'd messaged me 2 years ago claiming Jake had slid into her DMs. Back then I'd believed him when he said she was crazy. Now I knew better. I didn't want to drag people into my mess. But then I realized, it wasn't my mess. It was Jake's. I was just done pretending it wasn't there. That week I became an investigator. I dug through old group chats, photos, Facebook tags. Every flirty comment, every late night like, on some random girl's post. I connected dots, even when it made my stomach turn. One night while Ava dozed on my couch I called Jess. I hadn't spoken to her since I'd coldly told her to leave my relationship alone. She picked up on the second ring. Why, Hey Jess. I owe you an apology. There was a pause. Then a small laugh. Took you long enough. We talked for an hour. By the time we hung up, Jess had agreed to send me screenshots. She kept everything. Jake's messages. The sweet talk, the promises, the jokes about me being so dramatic. Each one felt like a nail in his coffin. By Friday my evidence folder was bulging. Ava stared at my laptop screen like she was watching a bomb ticking down. You sure you want to do this? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I watched the little videos I'd saved. The short clip of Jake laughing with Erica at our spot, her head on his shoulder, his lips brushing her temple. It didn't even look like him anymore. Or maybe I'd just never really seen him for who he was. I closed the laptop. Yeah, I'm sure. Planning the where was easy. If betrayal had an address, it would be Willow Lake. I wanted him right there. The dock, the initials carved into the rail, the place where he'd promised me forever. The place where he'd ruined it. So I sent the text. Can we talk? Willow Lake. Tomorrow 4 p.m. Just us. His reply came almost instantly. Of course. Been wanting to fix this. I love you, baby. I could practically hear him smirking through the screen. He thought I was coming to forgive him. To beg for scraps of his affection. Let him think that. Let him walk right into his own grave. Ava helped me set up the rest. She knew a local blogger who specialized in exposing cheaters. A messy corner of the internet I'd never paid attention to before. The blogger agreed to come with a camera on one condition. She wanted an exclusive. Fine by me. I also reached out to Jess and Hannah. I didn't expect them to show, but they both did. Maybe they needed the closure too, the final proof that it hadn't just been them. The morning of D-Day, I stood in front of my mirror, brushing my hair back into a low ponytail. My hands didn't shake. My eyes looked calm, not broken. There was something almost terrifying about how steady I felt. I wore the dress Jake always said was his favorite. Pale blue, soft cotton, innocent enough to remind him what he'd lost. I slipped the tiny voice recorder into my pocket. Ava gave me a small nod, like she was seeing a soldier off to war. "You ready?" she asked. I looked at her reflection behind me. Ready. On the drive out to Willow Lake, I thought about the first time Jake and I had come here. How I'd stood barefoot on the dock, squealing when the water lapped over my toes. How he'd spun me around under the pines and said, "No matter what happens, this place will always be ours." Well, now it would be his ruin. And my rebirth. I pulled up, heart steady, spine straight. I could see him already, waiting by the rail where our initials still clung to the wood like a ghost of a promise. He looked up when he saw me. He smiled. Poor Jake. He still thought I was his. For weeks, I'd imagined what this would feel like. The moment I stopped being the naive girl who waited by the phone and started being the woman who held the knife behind her back. I wish I could say revenge felt dirty. Maybe it should have. But when you've been lied to, gaslit, made to feel like your gut is something you can't trust? Sweetness is exactly what you taste when you decide to trust it anyway. It started with a single text. One I'd practiced 100 times before I finally hit send. Can we talk? Maybe at Willow Lake? I waited, breath frozen in my chest, wondering if he'd sensed the trap. But Jake's ego was too big for that. His reply came in seconds. "Jake, of course. Been wanting to fix things too. Saturday at sunset?" I stared at his words, my mouth curling into a smile so sharp it almost hurt. Perfect. I told Ava everything. She was sprawled across my bed, laptop open, tabs of wedding blogs and gossip forums pulled up like weapons. She'd been my co-conspirator since the night I caught him, and if I was going to burn my ex, she'd make sure it went up in a blaze. "So, let me get this straight," she said, twirling a pen between her fingers. "You're going to invite him there, pretend you want him back, and then?" I clicked open the folder on my phone. Screenshots of texts, photos I'd snapped of him with Erica at the cafe, a video of them kissing behind that ugly brick office building. I'd spent nights piecing it all together. His timeline, his excuses, the real truth. "I'm going to let him think we're getting back together," I said. "And then I'm going to show him exactly who he is. But not just to him, to her too." Ava's grin was wicked. "God, I love you when you're scary." Saturday came dressed in a golden haze, the kind of sunset that would have once made me grab Jake's hand and tell him how lucky we were. Now it felt like the universe's little wink. The calm before the storm. I stood at the edge of the dock, our dock, wearing the blue dress he'd always loved on me. Something poetic about that. Like I was wrapping myself in my old self just long enough to bury her for good. Jake's car pulled up, tires crunching on the gravel. My pulse spiked when he stepped out, like my body hadn't caught up to what my mind already knew. He still looked like the boy I fell for, stupidly handsome, that lopsided smile ready to break me open. But not tonight. "Maya." He said my name like it was a prayer, like it hadn't been a lie on his lips for months. I forced a shy, trembling smile. "Hey." He stepped closer, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, eyes flicking down my body in that familiar, greedy way. "You look. God, I've missed you. I'm glad you wanted to talk." "Me too." I let my voice crack like I was still that girl begging for scraps of his love. We sat on the railing where we'd carved our initials. The scars still there, J+M, like some bad joke. Jake reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "I know I messed up," he said. "Work's been insane, I haven't been present. But you know I'd never actually hurt you, right?" I almost laughed. The audacity of him rewriting the story even now. Instead I blinked, let a tear slip down my cheek. "Do you still love me?" He didn't even hesitate. "Of course I do. I'd do anything to make this right." If he'd looked over my shoulder, he might have seen Ava in the shadows, phone in hand, already live streaming to the private group we'd created. He might have seen Erica's car rolling up the trail, her best friend in tow, because if I was going to end this, I wasn't leaving her in the dark either. But Jake only had eyes for himself. His hand slid to my waist, pulling me closer. We can start fresh. Just you and me. No more lies. I tilted my head, pretending to search his eyes for the truth. Then I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed play. His voice crackled through the night air, a recording I'd taken just 2 days ago. Don't worry, baby. Maya's clueless. She thinks I'm working late again, she always buys it. Jake froze. His grip on my waist turned to stone. Behind him, Erica stepped onto the dock, arms folded, eyes wide as she realized the truth. And behind her, Ava filmed it all, catching every angle of Jake's mask crumbling. What the hell is this? He hissed. I smiled, my tears gone now, replaced by something colder, something that tasted like freedom. This is me getting back what you took from me. You loved this place so much, remember? Our perfect spot? I gestured around us, the lake catching the dying sun like a mirror. I figured it was the perfect place to bury you too, metaphorically of course. He turned to Erica, stammering excuses, but she was already backing away, betrayal twisting her features. Ava's phone caught every second. The evidence, the confessions, the pathetic apologies. And me? I just watched him flail. For the first time in months, I felt the weight slide off my shoulders. This wasn't revenge for the sake of cruelty. This was justice. This was taking back my power, one whispered lie at a time. Jake reached for me, eyes desperate. Aya, wait. We can fix this. Don't do this here, not here. I leaned in so close he could feel my breath on his cheek. Exactly here, I whispered. Because you broke me here. And now I'm whole again. Then I turned my back on him, on the boy who ruined my favorite place, and I walked down the dock into a future Jake always liked to believe he was the clever one. The charming liar, the smooth talker, the man who could juggle half a dozen truths and come out squeaky clean. He never imagined that I'd be the one to pull the rug out from under him. And he certainly didn't expect it to happen here. At our dock, our so-called sacred place, the scene of so many promises he'd turned to poison. He should have known better. He taught me how to lie. Now I'd show him how it felt to drown in the truth. I arrived early, just before sunset, when the lake turned to glass and the sky spilled colors like an open wound. It was poetic in a way, exposing his secrets in the same spot he'd once sworn we'd grow old together. Ava was with me. She'd parked her car out of sight near the trailhead. She was half nerves, half thrill, pacing with her phone glued to her hand. She'd invited the accidental witnesses, a few of Jake's old flings, some women he'd strung along at the same time he'd told me I was his one and only. She'd found them on social media, in chat groups I never would have thought to search. Turned out there were plenty of us. Erica, the redhead from his office, the one who had become the final straw, was coming too. I wasn't sure she'd show up, but Ava was persuasive, and women like us deserve the truth, no matter how ugly it is. When I heard tires crunch on the gravel, my stomach tightened. The lake reflected orange and rose, the perfect stage lighting for a perfect downfall. Jake stepped out of his car looking like the golden boy I'd fallen for all those years ago. Pressed shirt, perfect smile, flowers in hand, like this was some grand romantic reconciliation. God, he was shameless. He spotted me standing at the edge of the dock and raised the bouquet like a white flag. Aya, babe, you look beautiful. His voice dripped honey. He always did save his sweetest words for when he needed something. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. You came. Of course I did. You said you wanted to talk. I knew you'd come around. We're bigger than a few mistakes, right? A few mistakes. I almost laughed. I wanted to spit the word back at him, but I just tilted my head. Come here. He stepped closer. I could see the flicker of suspicion in his eyes when he noticed my phone in my back pocket. He reached for my waist, the same move he'd made 1,000 times before. But this time I stepped back. Out of reach. He looked confused. What's wrong? You know, Jake, it's funny. I used to think this place was the only thing holding us together. Now I see it for what it really is, a stage. So let's put on a show, shall we? He frowned. What are you talking about? Right on cue, footsteps crunched through the trees behind us. One by one they appeared, Erica first, her arms folded tight across her chest. Then Lena, the girl from 2 summers ago who used to be just a friend. And 2 more women I'd never even met, all with the same look in their eyes, betrayal, raw and jagged. Jake spun around, his mask slipping just a fraction. What the hell is this? This, I said, stepping forward, is your encore. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. A short video played. A neat little edit of him and Erica leaving his office late at night, clips of sweet nothings he'd texted me and the same lines sent to the other women. Receipts, all of it. The digital trail he thought he could erase. Projected now, loud enough for everyone to see. Jake's eyes darted to me, then to Erica. This is bullshit. They're lying. You know how people twist things online. Erica cut him off. You told me you were single. Lena stepped up beside her. He told me the same thing. Said you were crazy and wouldn't let him go. She turned to me, her mouth trembling. I'm sorry, Maya. I didn't know. It's not your fault. My voice was calm. The calm that comes when you've burned through all the tears and come out the other side made of steel. Jake's charm was cracking now. His cheeks flushed red. His hands flew up in a useless attempt to explain. You can't ambush me like this. You think anyone's going to believe? Ava stepped out of the shadows, holding up her phone. Already live, sweetheart. His eyes widened when he realized what she'd done. A few dozen people were already watching the live feed. Comments trickled in, heart emojis and popcorn emojis. The internet loving every second of his unraveling. You used me, Erica spat. You said we had something real, that she was controlling, that she didn't trust you. Jake grabbed for my arm. Maya, please. Baby, listen to me. I pulled back. Don't baby me. I turned to the others. Did he promise you the lake too? That this place was special? That it was just yours? They nodded. One by one, the lies lined up like dominoes. Jake's face fell with each confession. Every promise he'd made recycled like a cheap script. He tried to shout over us, but his voice cracked. The calm mask he wore so easily slipped completely. Now he was just a man, small and cornered, the cracks showing. This is insane. You'll ruin me. I smiled then, a smile I knew would haunt him more than any scream. You. Ruin yourself, Jake. I just turned the lights on. For a second no one moved. The only sound was the lapping of the lake against the dock, a soft, mocking applause. Then Ava stepped forward, holding out a lighter. Should we finish it? I took the flowers from his hand, the last cheap gesture of a man who thought he could fix everything with a bouquet. I held them over the lighter's flame until they caught. The flames licked up the stems, petals curling to ash. I dropped the burning mess at his feet. This is how much your forever means to me now. Erica tossed something too, the bracelet he'd given her, a cheap silver chain. It hit the dock with a dull clang. Jake stood frozen, surrounded by the ruins of his own making. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I took one last look at the initials carved into the dock's railing. J+M forever. I traced it with my fingertip, then scratched a line through it with my key. A clean break. No more us. Goodbye, Jake. He called my name as I turned away, but the wind off the lake carried his voice into nothing. We left him there, standing on that dock, the ashes of his lies blowing into the water. The women drifted away, shoulders squared, heads held higher than when they arrived. Ava squeezed my hand, her grin fierce and proud. The sun dipped below the trees, painting the water gold. I felt lighter than I had in years. Our favorite spot? Well, it wasn't ours anymore. It was mine. Some people will tell you revenge isn't worth it, that it never makes you feel better. I tossed the small wooden box at his feet, the one with our initials carved in it, the one that used to hold our dumb mementos. Inside now, every piece of proof, every lie, a tiny time capsule of his betrayal. Keep it. Yours. And so is the mess you made. He called my name as I turned away. Once. Twice. I didn't look back. Erica and the others followed me up the trail, our footsteps heavy but sure. For a moment, just before I reached my car, I turned to look at the lake one last time. The moon floated on its surface, the same moon that had watched me fall in love, break apart and now rise again. Our spot? Well, not anymore. Tonight it became mine. People like to tell you that revenge doesn't heal you, that it just leaves you empty, more bitter than before. But standing on that dock the morning after I exposed Jake for the liar he was, I felt lighter than I had in years. It wasn't the revenge that freed me. It was the truth. The final, undeniable proof that I wasn't crazy or clingy or paranoid. I was just a woman who loved a man who didn't know how to love her back. And now I was a woman who got to decide what to do with that truth. I came back to Willow Lake alone. The sky was washed in pale gold, a hush of morning mist rolling off the water. I could still see the scuff marks on the dock from where Jake had begged me to keep his secrets. The echo of his excuses was still here, tangled up in the pine branches, but they didn't hurt me anymore. Ava called while I stood there, phone buzzing in my pocket. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, voice rough with sleep. She'd been up late with me the night before, sipping cheap champagne and reading the endless stream of texts from people who'd seen my video. I almost laughed. "I'm good. I really am. You sound different." "I feel different." I ran my palm over the splintered railing where our initials used to be. The J was nearly gone now, the wood weathered by years of sun and rain. The M was still clear, stubborn, sharp. It made me smile. The next few weeks were messy in the way new beginnings always are. I blocked Jake's number for good this time. No more dramatic drunk texts from him at 2 a.m., no more promises to change. I didn't want them. I didn't want him. Erica called me once, crying about how he'd cheated on her too, how she'd believed his garbage just like I did. I listened. I told her she'd be okay too. Maybe she would be. Maybe we both would. Maybe that was the tiny mercy in all this. Knowing we weren't alone. I started sleeping in the middle of the bed. I deleted the folder of photos that used to make my chest ache. I bought new sheets, bright yellow like sunlight. I repainted the walls in my apartment. I even threw out the ratty old hoodie of his I'd clung to when I missed him. Felt good. Small things but good. Ava dragged me out of the house every weekend. We hit farmers markets, live music at dive bars, even a pottery class where I made a lopsided vase that looked like a drunk seashell. I laughed so hard I cried. And there was something else. Someone else. I met Liam at the cafe where I wrote the breakup post that blew up my whole life. He was the barista who used to see me and Jake together. He never said much back then, just a polite smile, an extra shot of espresso when he saw me yawning. But now he smiled wider. Asked how I was doing. Remembered my order. Remembered my name. One evening he wrote "You deserve better" on my cup instead of my name. I still keep that cup on my dresser. I'm not saying Liam and I fell in love overnight. I'm not even saying we fell in love at all. But he made me laugh. He made me feel seen. And for the first time I didn't feel like someone's shadow. I felt like me. I started going back to Willow Lake more often, but not to cry or remember. I brought my journal and a blanket, a basket of sandwiches and a thermos of tea. Sometimes Ava came with me. Sometimes I sat there alone, toes dipped in the cold water, eyes fixed on the endless sky. The dock wasn't haunted anymore. It was mine again. A place I could breathe. A place I could dream. One afternoon I stood up, took out my keys and carved a new set of initials into the railing. Just an M. Nothing else. No forever promises, no someone else's name tangled up with mine. Just me. Maybe that's what rebuilding really means. Not pretending the pain didn't happen but choosing to carry it differently. Turning your scars into something softer. Making peace with the parts of your story that nearly broke you. As I left the dock that day, the sun dipping low behind the trees, I looked back one last time. The lake shimmered like glass, the pine needles whispering secrets to the wind. I smiled. For the first time I knew I'd be okay. And this time our favorite spot? It was only mine. They say when a chapter ends, another begins. But nobody tells you how messy and beautiful the blank page in between can be. It had been 3 months since Willow Lake became my battlefield. And then, somehow, my sanctuary again. In those months, I didn't just reclaim the dock. I reclaimed myself. I quit the job I hated. The one that had me staying late so Jake could pretend he was doing the same. The office gossip, the endless revisions, the boss who thought my name was Mona. Half the time, I left it behind with my resignation letter folded like a love note to myself. Ava called me insane for not lining something else up first, but I'd been living like I was holding my breath for so long. I wanted to know what it felt like to inhale deeply and trust that I'd figure it out. And I did. I spent a few weeks doing the things I'd always told myself I'd do someday. I took a photography class. I traveled to the coast alone and stayed in a rickety motel with a view of the ocean. I walked barefoot on cold sand in the morning and watched the sun crawl out of the sea like it was being reborn every single day. I realized that I could be reborn too. The nights were the hardest. It's easy to stay busy when the sun is up, to keep your hands full so your mind can't wander. But when the house is quiet, the ghosts come to visit. At first they brought old memories, good ones and bad. The warmth of Jake's hand on the small of my back, the sound of his laugh when he wasn't lying yet, the hush of whispered promises on the dock, the sting of his betrayal like cold water on raw skin. But after a while the ghosts got tired. Their voices faded softer every night, until they were just a hum in the background. I realized I didn't need to fight them. I just needed to let them drift away. One morning, I found myself back at the cafe where I'd written my viral goodbye to Jake. Liam was there, of course. Warm smile, mismatched mugs, and a new habit of sliding pastries across the counter for free. Why? He said my name like he was tasting it for the first time, like it belonged only to me. We started talking more. About books, about travel, about how badly he wanted to open his own place someday. He didn't push me for anything I wasn't ready to give. He just sat with me, sometimes in silence, sometimes in laughter, always steady. One crisp Sunday, he asked if I wanted to come with him to a flea market. We spent the whole afternoon wandering through stalls of cracked teacups, vintage postcards, and weird old trinkets that nobody needed but everyone touched. He bought me a small brass key with a heart carved into the bow. "For your next door," he said. I carry it in my pocket now. Not as a promise of him, but as a promise to myself. That the next door will be mine to open. It's funny, the dock at Willow Lake used to be my whole world. I thought it held the best parts of my story, all those sun-soaked promises carved into old wood. But the truth is, the best parts are ahead of me. The last time I went out there, I brought Ava and Liam. We sat at the edge of the dock, our feet skimming the water. We ate sandwiches that tasted better than any fancy dinner Jake ever bought me. We laughed until our ribs hurt. As the sun set, I stood up and looked at the carving. That single M, stubborn and strong. I didn't cry. I didn't cling. I didn't wish for what was. I just felt grateful. Grateful for the girl who once believed in forever. Grateful for the woman who learned to believe in herself instead. So if you ever find yourself standing where I was, heartbroken, humiliated, hollowed out, remember this. Sometimes you have to lose what you thought was everything to find what actually is. Sometimes you have to stand on the ashes of your old life to see how much you can grow. And sometimes, the places that break you become the places you build yourself back up. As I left the lake for the last time that summer, I felt the breeze against my skin like a soft promise. I wasn't her anymore. The girl who let someone decide her worth. I was someone new.